Josef Mengele, the angel of death. He stood on the selection ramp at Auschwitz-Birkenau, impeccably dressed in his SS uniform, whistling opera tunes while deciding who would live and who would die. A flick of his finger to the left meant immediate death in the gas chambers. A flick to the right meant slave labor and slow death, but sometimes he would pause, look more closely at an arrival, and say two words that filled prisoners with a unique kind of terror: "You're twins." Josef Mengele was nicknamed the Angel of Death. He is often remembered for his presence on the selection ramps at Auschwitz, where he conducted inhumane and often deadly medical experiments on prisoners. In contrast to most of the other SS doctors, who viewed selections as one of their most stressful and unpleasant duties, he undertook the task with a flamboyant air, often smiling or whistling. This is the story of a man who had 2 doctorates, came from a respectable family, and turned medicine, the art of healing, into an instrument of torture and murder. The promising student. Josef Mengele was born on March 16, 1911, in the Bavarian city of Günzburg, Germany. He was the eldest son of Karl Mengele, a prosperous manufacturer of farming equipment. The Mengele family was well respected, wealthy, and socially prominent. Josef grew up with privilege, education, and opportunity. He was bright, ambitious, and drawn to science. Mengele studied medicine and physical anthropology at several universities. In 1935, he earned a PhD in physical anthropology from the University of Munich. He received a second doctorate in medicine in 1938. By his late 20s, Josef Mengele had achieved what many academics spend their entire lives pursuing: recognition as a promising young researcher. He was a highly trained doctor and medical researcher, as well as a decorated war veteran. He was respected in his field and worked for one of the leading research institutions in Germany. But this was Nazi Germany, and science was being twisted to serve ideology. He joined the Nazi Party in 1937 and the SS in 1938. For Mengele, this wasn't just political opportunism. He genuinely believed in Nazi racial theory. He believed some human beings were superior to others. He believed science could prove it, and he was willing to do anything to advance that research. The opportunity. In May 1943, Mengele was assigned to Auschwitz-Birkenau. For most SS doctors, this was a grim duty. For Mengele, it was an opportunity unlike any in the world. While Mengele served at Auschwitz-Birkenau, more than 20,000 Roma were imprisoned there, and hundreds of thousands of Jews arrived there on transports. Nowhere else in the world could scientists have access to so many members of these groups concentrated in one place, and nowhere else did they have the power to experiment on human beings in whatever way they wanted. One colleague recalled Mengele saying it would be a crime not to take advantage of the opportunities for human experimentation at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Think about that statement. To Mengele, the crime wasn't conducting experiments on human beings without their consent. The crime would be failing to exploit the opportunity. He set up his research facility in the Roma family camp. He was researching the issues of twins and the physiology and pathology of dwarfism in close cooperation with the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology, Genetics and Eugenics in Berlin-Dahlem. He was also interested in people with different colored irises, heterochromia, and in the etiology and treatment of noma, a gangrenous disease endemic to the Roma prisoners in Auschwitz. But research at Auschwitz wasn't like research at a university. At Auschwitz, if you wanted to understand genetics, you could kill one twin and dissect them to compare their organs with their living sibling. If you wanted to study eye color, you could inject chemicals directly into children's eyes. If a subject died during your experiment, there were thousands more where they came from. The selection ramp. Mengele's first duty was selection. When trains arrived at Auschwitz, packed with Jewish families from across occupied Europe, SS doctors would sort the arrivals into two groups. Those judged fit for slave labor were admitted to the camp. Everyone else, the elderly, the sick, children, mothers with young children, were sent directly to the gas chambers. Mengele was one of the doctors who made weekly visits to the hospital barracks and ordered any prisoners who had not recovered after 2 weeks in bed to be sent to the gas chambers. Most SS doctors hated this duty. They would drink heavily before and after selections. They viewed it as a necessary evil of their posting. But Mengele was different. He would show up to selections even when he wasn't scheduled. He would stand on the ramp, perfectly groomed, sometimes whistling Wagner or Verdi, pointing left or right with casual authority. Survivors remembered him as handsome, charming even. He would smile at children before sending them to their deaths. He had perfect posture. He wore white gloves. He looked more like a society doctor than a mass murderer. And he was always searching for twins. The twin experiments. Mengele's obsession with twins stemmed from his belief that studying identical twins could unlock the secrets of heredity and help prove Nazi racial theories. Twin research was of particular interest to Mengele. One twin could serve as a subject with the other as the control. Mengele viewed the opportunity to undertake twin research at Auschwitz as unique, as it is normally difficult to locate and study a significant number of subjects. When twins arrived at Auschwitz, Mengele would personally pull them from the selection line. "Are you twins?" he would ask. If the answer was yes, they were spared the gas chambers. But what happened next was often worse. Historian Nicholas Waxman estimates Mengele may have studied as many as 1,000 sets of twins. Most of the twins he studied were children between the ages of 2 and 16. The twins were housed in special barracks. They received better food than other prisoners. They didn't have to work. Mengele would bring them candy. He would pat their heads and call them his little friends. Some twins remembered him being kind to them, at least initially. Then came the experiments. Mengele would conduct extensive physical examinations, taking measurements of every body part. He drew blood constantly, sometimes taking so much that children would faint. He conducted painful procedures without anesthesia. He injected various substances into their eyes, attempting to change their color or study the effects of different chemicals. Mengele performed transfusions on twins without prior cross-matching tests, which meant that if the donor's blood didn't match the recipient's, it led to death. The entire questionnaire related to his research shows the complexity and intricacy of these studies. It contains many questions concerning the minutest details of internal organ structures, which Mengele could examine after the killing of one of the twins. It often happened that these children were killed one after the other to conduct comparative autopsies and see how the organs looked. Read that again. Mengele would kill one twin so he could dissect them and compare their organs to their still living sibling. Then he would kill the other twin and dissect them too, to have matching specimens. The other experiments. Twins weren't Mengele's only subjects. He conducted experiments on anyone who interested him scientifically. He injected adrenaline into children's eyes in an attempt to change eye color and to study environmental influences. He sent eyes with heterochromia to his colleague Karin Magnusson, extracted from the bodies of inmates who died or were killed. He studied dwarfism by experimenting on people with the condition. One survivor testified about being submerged alternately in hot and cold water for extended periods, while Mengele watched, apparently testing the limits of human endurance. A victim testified, "Each day I was submerged in hot water. Whenever I tried to put my head out of the water in order to breathe, I was forced back into the water by Dr. Josef Mengele's stick. He was enjoying himself. This lasted for 10 minutes. I was immediately afterwards put into cold water, and the same procedure was repeated." Mengele set up a research program on Roma children called Noma Project to study the causes of Noma, a gangrenous disease of the face, and to find treatment methods. Heads and selected body parts of children suffering from Noma were prepared in formaldehyde jars and sent to researchers at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Children's body parts, preserved in jars, sent to prestigious research institutions as if they were laboratory specimens, because to Mengele, that's exactly what they were. The monster with manners. What made Mengele particularly horrifying was his demeanour. He wasn't a ranting fanatic or an obvious sadist. He was polite, educated, cultured. He would conduct brutal experiments in the morning, then enjoy a fine dinner and classical music in the evening. Survivors described him as having two faces. To fellow SS officers, and during social occasions, he was charming and witty. But in his laboratory, working with his subjects, he was cold, methodical, and utterly indifferent to suffering. He would inject chemicals into children's eyes to see if he could change their colour, causing excruciating pain and sometimes blindness. He would perform surgeries without anesthesia. He would kill subjects when he was done with them or when they became too sick to continue, with a phenol injection to the heart. And through it all, he maintained the pretense that this was science. He kept meticulous records.
He wrote detailed reports. He corresponded with prestigious researchers at German universities. He submitted his findings for publication.
His crimes represent the extreme danger posed by science when it is conducted in the service of an ideology that denies the rights, dignity, and humanity of certain groups of people. The escape. On the night of January 17, 1945, as the Soviet army approached Poland from the east, Mengele left Auschwitz, salvaging what records he could from his experiments on twins, people with dwarfism, and others. From that night, he never stopped running. He fled westward, where he joined a retreating unit of Wehrmacht soldiers, exchanging his SS uniform for a Wehrmacht officer's. American soldiers arrested him in Weiden, Germany, more than 400 miles west of Auschwitz, and held him for 2 months in 2 prisoner camps. But the Americans released Mengele when they failed to identify him as the same Josef Mengele listed on wanted for mass murder and other crimes circulars. Why didn't they identify him? It was Mengele's decision not to have his blood group tattooed on his chest or arm when he joined the SS in 1938 that clinched his freedom. Most SS members had their blood type tattooed for quick identification in case of injury. Mengele, perhaps out of vanity or foresight, had declined. Without that tattoo, the Americans had no way to prove he was SS. They let him go. For several years, Mengele hid in Germany, working as a farmhand under a false name. Then, in 1949, with the help of an underground network, he fled to Argentina with an international Red Cross passport. The Angel of Death was free. The hunt. Nazi hunters, led by Austrian Holocaust survivor Simon Wiesenthal and others, searched desperately for Mengele. He became one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals. His crimes were so well documented, his victims so numerous, that bringing him to justice became an international priority. Mengele moved between Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil, always staying one step ahead. He lived under various aliases. Sometimes he lived openly, attending German expatriate social events. Other times he hid in remote farmhouses. He had help from his wealthy family back in Germany, who sent him money. He had protection from sympathetic officials in South American countries. In the 1960s, Mossad agents came close to capturing him in Argentina, but ultimately prioritized the capture of Adolf Eichmann instead. After Eichmann's capture, Mengele went deeper underground. The chase continued for decades. Every lead seemed to go nowhere. Every sighting turned out to be false. The monster remained free. The death no one witnessed. Mengele died in 1979 of a stroke while swimming at a beach near São Paulo, Brazil. He was 67 years old. He drowned in shallow water, alone, his identity unknown to the people who pulled his body from the ocean. He was buried under a false name in a Brazilian cemetery. For years, no one knew he was dead. The manhunt continued. His name remained on most wanted lists. His family in Germany stayed silent. It wasn't until 1985 that authorities definitively confirmed Mengele had died years earlier. They exhumed the body, conducted forensic analysis, and confirmed through dental records and bone structure that this was indeed Josef Mengele. He had lived 34 years after Auschwitz was liberated. He died of natural causes peacefully while swimming. He was never arrested, never tried, never forced to answer for what he'd done to thousands of innocent people. The uncomfortable truth. Mengele's escape raises difficult questions that have never been satisfactorily answered. How did he slip through American custody in 1945? Why wasn't his name cross-referenced properly? How did he obtain an international Red Cross passport? Who helped him reach South America? Why did it take so long to confirm his death? Some of the answers are bureaucratic incompetence. Some are the chaos of post-war Europe. But some point to something darker, the possibility that people in positions of power simply didn't care enough to catch him. The Cold War was beginning. The Americans and Soviets were recruiting German scientists, including some with Nazi pasts. Resources were focused on new enemies. Old crimes seemed less urgent. Mengele wasn't useful enough to recruit like some Nazi scientists were, but he also wasn't a high enough priority to pursue aggressively. He fell through the cracks, and those cracks were wide enough for him to escape through. The legacy of horror. Today, Mengele's name is synonymous with medical evil. Medical ethics codes specifically reference the horrors of Nazi experimentation. The Nuremberg Code, established in 1947, created fundamental principles for human experimentation that still guide medical research today. Mengele's victims who survived have spent their lives bearing witness. Eva Moses Kor, who was experimented on as a child twin, dedicated her life to Holocaust education and forgiveness, though she never forgot what Mengele did. Other survivors struggled with trauma, physical disabilities from the experiments, and the grief of losing their twin siblings. The twins who survived often described a peculiar grief. They missed the sibling who'd been killed after serving as Mengele's experimental control. They'd been spared the gas chambers only to watch their brother or sister die in a laboratory. The question that haunts: how does a man with 2 doctorates, from a good family, with every advantage in life, become a monster who experiments on children? Mengele wasn't born evil. He was educated in the same universities that trained thousands of other doctors. He worked with prestigious research institutions. He had colleagues, friends, a family who loved him. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing his victims as human beings. He saw them as specimens, as data, as opportunities for research. Nazi ideology provided the justification. His ambition provided the motivation. Auschwitz provided the opportunity. And once he started, he never showed remorse. Not during the war, not during his decades in hiding, not even in private letters to his family, where he complained about his exile but never expressed regret for his crimes. The Angel of Death. They called him the Angel of Death, and the name fits. Angels in religious tradition are messengers and agents of divine will. But Mengele was an agent of something else entirely, an ideology that denied the humanity of millions, disguised as science. He stood on the selection ramp, deciding life and death with the flick of a finger. He conducted experiments that tortured and killed thousands in the name of research. He escaped justice and died free. His name endures not as a warning to monsters, they rarely heed warnings, but as a reminder to the rest of us. Evil doesn't always announce itself with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes with doctorates, good manners, and a belief that the end justifies any means. Josef Mengele, the doctor who forgot he was supposed to heal, the scientist who forgot that his subjects were human, the man who escaped justice but will never escape history's judgment, the angel of death, the reminder that education without ethics, ambition without conscience, and science without humanity create monsters more terrifying than any myth.